Speech and language impairment are basic categories that might be drawn in issues of communication involving hearing, speech, language, and fluency. Speech impairment is characterized by difficulty in articulation of words, where language impairment is a specific impairment in understanding and sharing thoughts and ideas. Dear viewers, about 15% of world's population experience some form of disability, and disability prevalence is higher for developing countries like India, Bangladesh, and other lower economic countries. Persons with disabilities are more likely to experience adverse socio-economic outcomes than persons without having disabilities, such as less education, poorer health outcomes, lower levels of employment, and higher poverty rates. Hello viewers, welcome to see this episode, The Professional Talk, brought by Shahjamin Exim Limited. Today, we will discuss a very important topic. You already know, disability inclusion during COVID-19. And for that reason, we have invited our distinguished guests. Before going to main discussion, I would like to introduce them. Dear viewers, you can see Mr. Utpal Mullik, development worker working in Bangladesh, and Mr. Safwan, speech therapist from Malaysia. Thanks everyone. You people are very much busy, but somehow you managed your time. First, I would like to request Mr. Utpal Mullik to introduce himself to the audience. Sir, I hope you can hear me. Please tell something about you, about your work, where you are working.
Okay, dear viewers, good morning, good evening, based on where you are living and from where you are connected with us. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for inviting me to this special episode. Yes, I am the first graduating class of speech and language therapist in the country. I started my career with doing research on disability and educational things for children with disabilities. And then I spent more than 7 years at BRAC, which is world's largest NGO, you know. And from their research and evaluation division, I had the opportunity to contribute BRAC's efforts in opening up new schools, new rehabilitation centers, specialized community setups for children and persons with disabilities. And I basically help them scaling up and kind of made myself busy in identifying what are the things they are doing good and what additional improvements are needed. So that was kind of a very technical role. Later, I was kind of thinking to use my theoretical understanding that I have from undergrad classes and the research experiences for more than 7 years. I wanted to do something more practical, more kind of directly supporting activities for children and persons with disabilities. And I took the role of director of the national level disability NGO. And then later I just switched for another UK-based international disability charity. But I'm here for my personal capacity, not from my any official mission here. And I, you know, during the very beginning of my talks today, I'll request my audience to kind of excuse me, because you see, because of the other resource persons we are having from Malaysia who is unable to talk in Bangla. So I'm trying to communicate few thoughts with you English, and pardon my bad language preparations. Okay, so over these years, basically I tried to cover issues that can complement disability mainstreaming ideas. I promoted diversity. I basically prefer to consider myself as development worker, less than disability activist, and I really mean to do something for the uh, social, economical, physical, overall well-being of persons with disabilities. So my kind of intervention with 4 more organizations within almost more than 10 years, I was trying to be an advocate for persons with disabilities and their rights, empowerment issues. So is it okay up to now, Mr. Moderator?
Thank you so much for your nice speech. Same question is for Mr. Safwan Yusuf. I know it's 11 p.m. at Malaysia and this is midnight. It's time to go to sleep, but somehow you managed your time. Thank you so much for that. But I have a request to you. Same question. You can please describe something about you, where you are working, and what's the condition of Malaysia right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Siddiq. So I'm Safwan. Currently, I'm a speech therapy at Hospital Kuala Lumpur. If you don't know, Hospital Kuala Lumpur is our busiest hospital in Malaysia. It's a general hospital. I work with government. So during pandemic COVID, we see a patient, but not so much. But now our clinical schedule is back to busy because thanks to our government, we able to manage COVID cases for now. It's every day is less than 5 cases. So everything back to the business. So my schedule right now is quite full in clinic. And yeah, we still practicing social distancing during our therapy time. In General Hospital Kuala Lumpur, basically I deal with cases from pediatric to geriatric population. So we have a lot of cases, for example, like autism, Down syndrome, hearing impairment, and also aphasia. So yeah, that's all about me.
Thank you, Mr. Safwan. Now it's time to go to the main discussion. So if I want to ask questions, Mr. Utpal Mullik, I hope you can hear me. So you are working in the disability sector and you are working with people who usually excluded from the mainstream society, and you try to include them to the typical people, to the typical environment, to the typical work. So what is the focus of your work so far in the disability sector? And in what way has the COVID-19 pandemic increased the challenge faced by persons with disabilities? I hope you understand my question.
Okay, yes, thank you. From the introduction, I covered a little of my engagement, and I'll add on that. So, as I have had the privilege to work with countries' giant development organizations, and still I'm currently doing for international charity as part of. Uh, I mean, we are funding local disability NGOs so that they can run their own operations targeting persons with disabilities. So what we observed so far from these communities, from the partner organizations, you see, as you rightly mentioned, persons with disabilities are the most vulnerable, marginalized group, and they are traumatized for many reasons. And like any other risk crisis situation, this group is particularly left out in terms of humanitarian support services, medical health, and related others uh, provisions that generally governments and non-government organizations you try to provide. So for this COVID, the same situation is existing within our communities. Persons with disabilities are not getting enough information how to combat COVID situation and how to seek support, where to get assistance like food supplies and others, and and there is a very close relation between disability and poverty. So because of their poor economic conditions, their sufferings double tripled during this COVID situation because they they are not earning, they are not having enough money to have their emergency services supports they need. So they are suffering more than anybody. And you see, organizations that generally try to do something for them are not that much active operational these days because of the country lockdown situations and restrictions. They in most cases are working from home and they are unable to directly support this group, and what limited support they can make remotely you can easily assume. So I see the helplessness everywhere, from persons with disabilities by themselves, from their communities, from organizations that we usually used to fund. They have money, they have project money, but they are unable to provide any support uh, as they planned. And then another thing is they are not kind of people. Organizations are not that ready like anybody, and there are no kind of separate arrangements, preparations by themselves, so that they ended up less prepared, disorganized. So they are not really supporting persons with disabilities enough. So this is how the gravity of the challenges and problems increased over this time. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, Mr. Utpal Mullik, for your kind information regarding disability and regarding the challenges during COVID pandemic. If I now it's turn for Mr. Safwan Yusuf. Mr. Safwan Yusuf, I hope you can hear me. From the discussion of Utpal Mullik, I came to know that I already knew it. Disorder turns to disability, and disability due to disorder is very common around the world. So, what is the common cause of disorder, especially speech disorder, as you are working as a speech therapist? So, if you want to tell something regarding it.
Okay, thank you, Siddiq. So, what causes speech disorder? Basically, the thing that causes speech disorder is due to cognitive issue. For example, autism, Down syndrome. Well, as you know, these two diagnoses is make children have some need help to learn. So it affect their learning and end up they have a speech disorder. Basically, besides that, they, for example, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So this also can cause speech delay because the children usually have the ability to wait and listen from other people, but due to certain issue with cognitive, then it will cause speech delay. It same goes to hearing impairment. Some of the kids needs to listen in order for them to talk. So if they have hearing problem, so definitely they will have issue to talk. Besides that, motor speech disorder, yeah, maybe like Down syndrome, they have some weakness, so they also will have speech delay. And some kids that have apraxia, is a motor neuron disease. It also can cause a speech delay due to inability for them to to tell what they want. Yeah, like that.
So but you have discussed something interesting regarding disability and disorder. So how common autism spectrum disorder in Malaysia, and what is the characteristics of communication disorders?
I'm sorry, I didn't know about statistic of autism, but I think it's almost same with other country. Its effect, it doesn't know the race. Autism, it can affect all of the people, even though different economic situation, even they are poor, rich, they have a possibility to have child with autism. For statistic, I'm so sorry, for now I don't have the numbers yet.
So thank you so much for your answer, and I'm really pleased. So it's time for Mr. Uttam Mullik. If I want to ask one more question for you, how COVID-19 prevention interventions can be more inclusive during this time?
Okay, very good question. Thank you. You see, we are running a fourth month since the first case was diagnosed in our country. Since then, we were observing that media is playing a very proactive role in terms of providing information. So as our people got locked inside home, and they are very much kind of depending on newspapers, because this is a very new thing. Even physicians, experts, scientists are not that kind of sure about what is going to happen and which is the ultimate reasons people are being affected from COVID. So that time, you see, we observed like there were no kind of sign language subtitles or large printed materials. So sign language subtitle is important for those with speech and hearing impairments, and for large fonts, so that persons with visual impairments can read through their screen readers. So that time those things are missing, and then from our part, from many national and international disability organizations, basically raised and voiced their concerns, and then at some point we observed that mainly electronic media are using sign language interpreter, and the same happened for newspapers. They started publishing these information pieces in a pictorial manner, in a large fonts, so that those with disability of some kind get those ideas in a relatively easier manner. So yes, that helped, and I brought this example because that was kind of something we should kind of appreciate from both government and non-government initiatives. So you see, persons with disabilities are like anybody. They are human first. So you see, if this group is not kind of taken care of during messaging, during awareness raising and knowledge dissemination, so ultimately they will leave behind, and they will leave behind, and because of the nature of the contagious uh, disease, probably they will kind of they will be cause of further spread in their families and in their communities. So that was really needed. And you see, uh, people like you are doing a lot. You are organizing these webinars, I guess, once in a week. And I see similar other my fellow colleagues are doing this. I appreciate that, because this is how messages, information uh, are going to families. And you see, this is of course covering a very uh, small part of the country, and many of our countrymen are not having internet connectivity and this kind of Facebook Live opportunities. But uh, whatever we can do, from from very smaller to very larger scale, we should kind of always think like how we can better accommodate needs of this group, because these are the uh, uh, I mean, very close of minds, our family members, our community uh, friends and fellows. So we need to do something for them. So if the mindset to do something, I mean, the inclusion idea is something you can develop inside your mind, then of course you will get ideas to be innovative, to kind of uh, strategize in alternative uh, methodologies, so that you can better guide and pursue disabilities and make them understand, and their families understand how they can better support them, so that they can avoid from this uh, uh, pandemic. Did it help?
Yes, yes, of course. So, you already know, during this pandemic, everyone is very busy with their own agenda, and a child with autism spectrum disorder is more suffering than a typical person. I am doing my daily living activities every day. I am helping others, but a child with autism spectrum disorder can't even express his or her needs, her thoughts. So, what is your suggestion, Mr. Safwan Yusuf? What is your suggestion, or can you suggest us for some home activities? How can we help them? How can we help those children with that disorder? Mr. Safwan, you can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you, Siddiq. So, how can autism kids tell what they need? First of all, we as a speech therapy, we need to establish communication, the basic communication for the child. If if the autistic children, if they can talk, so we need to increase their vocab, especially for requesting. So that's why usually in my session I start with request. At least use open palm hand gesture to request something. And if the children unable to talk, so we use PACS. PACS is Picture Exchange Communication System. It's really helpful for children with autism because they are visually oriented. If some of you are not familiar with PACS, PECS, so basically the children just need to take the picture and to give to the communication partner, for example, the parents, to tell what they want without saying it. Because the main thing about PACS is to communicate, not for the child to talk. Because some of you might know that some of the autistic kids have apraxia, which is difficulty to speak, and it takes quite some time to teach them some words. So yeah, PACS is one of the best thing to teach your child how to tell what they want. But first, you must to make sure your child can identify the picture. Okay, and you need to make sure the packs is available in your house. I mean, you can put it on the wall, you can put on the kitchen, living room, in your room, in your toilet, so it's easier for them to reach the picture and to give you to tell what they want. Okay, ask your speech therapy how to do packs if you don't know, but the basic thing is the child need to use a picture to tell communication partner, parents or sibling what they want. And besides that, you need to look at gesture. Sometimes autistic kids, they want to something, but you need to see where his eye contact is. I mean, they may look at the fridge just to tell you that they want something from the fridge. Okay. So for me, if the child is non-verbal, then use specs. If it's verbal, then try to increase their vocab. And now I know that most of the parents working at home, so try to teach at least one word every day. How to teach? How to teach is by repetition. Remember, if you repeat many times, so inshallah, your child able to know what is it. For example, if you want to teach your child, like say, I want a milk. So make sure to repeat the whole day, milk, 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 and then inshallah your child know it. If your child cannot say it, then use a picture, use specs. Yeah, that's my suggestion at home.
So, do you think, besides language disorder, is there any sensory issues a child with autism spectrum disorder may face? Any oral sensory issues? Around the globe, there are some specific treatment protocol for oral sensory issues, like oral placement therapy or OPT. In short, we know. So, are you practicing OPT in Malaysia, or you just focus on the language issues?
Right now, I'm focusing also in sensory part. During first assessment, we will look what is the problem of the child and what is the main concern of the kids. If the parents concern on language, so we focus on language. But if the parents concern on feeding, yes, we go on that. Usually, autism kid will have a problem feeding due to sensory issue. Yes, we need to do a lot of sensory part. We have SOS, like you say, oral placement therapy, and something like that. So it's really important to make sure to resolve the feeding issue, because it's quite frustrating for the parents to give the child one type of the same meal every day. Usually the parents need to cook the different menu for their family just because their child have autistic kids. So yes, we do also for the feeding part, the sensory part. It's really important to do that. And you need to work with occupational therapy. In Malaysia, yes, we do work with them. We will ask for their help also to help sensory part. Because if you do the therapy, but at the same time your child are not ready, then most of the time your therapy is not effective. So it's better to work with occupational therapy to let them settle the sensory part.
So, what is your ultimate goal after completing therapy? Do you want to include the child into the mainstream society? Do you have a plan to enroll the child into a school? Because after 10 years, a child will no more a child. You will be a complete adult. And what is your opinion regarding this?
For me, the ultimate goal is the child able to be independent as much as possible. Yes, if the autism is quite severe, then of course they need help. But if the severity is mild, we need to help them to achieve at least they can live independently. I had seen lots of autism adult. Some of them can live independently. Some of them can even work. But of course, we need to establish the communication also. So when the child still kids, we need to do a lot of things especially with occupational therapy, to help them to be independent as much as possible, and so that they can, after 18 years old, they can at least find a job that's suitable for them. In Malaysia, we have like Autism Cafe. Is a cafe it's a cafe where all the autism adult is working in there. So we do have place like that in here, to help this population to work. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Safwan. Thank you, Mr. Safwan. Again, Mr. Uthman Malik, the pandemic is an unprecedented crisis, but also an opportunity to rethink approaches to vulnerability and inclusion. So what do you think?
Absolutely. You see, we are all going through a very extraordinary time, and we have to kind of behave extraordinarily, because as you said, this should be considered as an opportunity too, because you see, uh, at a macro level, overall health and rehabilitation sector, particularly health, of course problem was there, but this is the first time probably as a nation we are witnessing how bad health system we have, how much how many opportunities we missed so far in terms of doing good for the country, bringing governance in the health system, and doing good for people. So we are kind of having all these kind of uh, less prepared hospitals, not that uh, technically sound, uh, people who know how to handle situation like this pandemic. So we need to kind of invest our time and money, as that is also a very kind of uh, unfortunate thing for us. There is not enough budgetary allocations for Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, where most countries do the opposite. So in terms of human resource planning, development of capacities of hospitals, rehabilitation centers, in terms of ensuring accountability with the system, we need to really think seriously, so that lessons learned from these failures this time can be properly dealt later, slowly, and hopefully we have that kind of potential to do better, to do more for the countrymen. And in that kind of perspective, I will definitely agree with you. We have an opportunity to materialize, since we know the problems, where are the challenges we are experiencing with, and what additional inputs, efforts to be made from individual to government level. And as far as disability is concerned, we know persons with disabilities are suffering even more than anybody because of many other things that we discussed earlier. So this sector particularly should get a little more attention We believe the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her daughter is passionate personalities for persons with disabilities, but we have long way to go. The state machineries, directors, departments that we have should be strengthened enough so that persons with disabilities are taken better care of. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the information you have already talked about. Mr. Safwan, I hope you can hear me. Mr. Safwan, I know if I am a physiotherapist, I can use some device, some materials, some electric or mechanical devices. But in speech pathology or speech therapy, do you think device is necessary to use? A patient from the rural area, he or she doesn't know about the autism treatment or treatment of strategies of communication disorders. Is there any device available in Malaysia? Do you think we need to use different approaches at the same time? I have two questions. Number one, do you think there are any device you are using in Malaysia? And number two, do you think we need to deliver different treatment strategies? Like sometimes I need to use PECs, sometimes I need to implement hand-in strategies. Now sometimes I need to use talk tools or oral placement therapy. What do you think about it?
Okay, so for your question number one, do you think we need any device? So one of the beautiful thing about speech therapy is for we to do therapy is we just talk compared to physiotherapy and occupational therapy. So we don't need those expensive device yet, but so this is really good for parents to practice their speech to kids without using any device. For rural area, I would strongly suggest if we start tele-rehab. In Malaysia, yes, we had some of our clinic had started tele-rehab, and it's really helpful, especially during pandemic, during the COVID-19. In tele-rehab, since we have a tele-rehab and a good internet connection, so even though our kids didn't go to the center or to the hospital, they still can receive therapy during that time. And since the parents also at home, so they can practice it a lot at home. Besides, in internet, if you search everything, you can see a lot of home-based program that you can use to teach autistic children. Okay. In terms of any device, I'm not sure. So far, we for device for rural area, I suggest for only laptop or computer with a webcam to do tele-rehab. Okay, so your question is number two about PACS or talk tools or hand program. Can you repeat that question again, Mr. Siddiq, for question number two?
Number two is sometimes we go through the usual traditional treatment approaches like hybrid approach, like a self-talk, parallel talk, or some protocols from ABA. So every week a child with autism spectrum disorder usually receives 2 or 3 sessions. More than 3 sessions is much difficult for them to manage their time. So do you think, I know that you also know that PECS is very important for child with autism spectrum disorder, as it helps to develop the language. At the same time, hand strategy, and at the same time, oral placement therapy is for reducing sensory issues. So can we go through the 3 treatment strategies at the same time, or you suggest to divide it different parts?
Oh, okay. So for Hanan, if you want to do you want to complete the program, it have 13 sessions. So I think it's more better if we focus on that thing first. And if the parents do Hanan more than words program, they need to finish 13 series of week. So during that time, we will teach parents a lot of more like parent-child interaction, how to teach, how to engage your child, how to make your child communicate with you. And for example, follow your child's lead. That's one of the things that I really interest in Hanan, which is you follow what your child like. So if we follow what our child like, so of course they will somehow they will allow us to go with them compared to if we do it our own self. For PACS and talk tools, yes, I think we can do both at the same time because even though, PACS actually it have its own protocol, but PACS it's targeting more on communicating, and talk tools it target on sensory. If the child has these two big things, better you do both of it. And also if the parents have a concern on it, yes, you need to do both. But after all, you need to ask the parents first which is the most concern for them, because it's quite hard to run all these two PACS and talk tools because it's required quite sometimes. In my session, if the parents is really concerned on both, so I will divide 1 hour into 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes for sensory, and another 30 minutes is for communication. That includes PACS, for example, or any traditional approach like self-talk, parallel talk, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's my opinion regarding device. So for Hanan, I prefer it to do it 13 week every week. But for PACS and talk tools, we can run both of it.
So, do you think, one more question for you, do you think screen timing can hamper the language development? Children, any children, it's typical or atypical. Everyone likes to use YouTube, go through the other online or online videos. So, most of the time they tends to engage with some kinds of videos. Some videos is in English, some videos in Hindi or Spanish. So there is a multilingual barrier. So do you think screen timing hampers their language development?
Okay, so in my opinion, if you leave your child with screen time, if you leave your child with gadget for quite a long time, so yes, it will hinder, it will affect his language development. Even though it's not with, the child is not autism or have any other cognitive issue, even normal developmental child also will have a speech delay if they if they spend too much time with gadget. But in nowadays, in our time right now, I don't think so. We can separate between gadget and us. Even though we as an adult, we tend to play with phone every time. Okay, so what you can do with gadget is you need to play with, you need to sit with them during when they are watching a iPad, for example. In those gadgets now, we have lots of educational materials, and during that time you need to teach your child, so you have a two-way communication. If you just leave your child with gadget, so it's only one-way communication. It does not develop language so much. It's something like the gadget talk to you, and when the child reply back, the gadget, of course, they cannot reply you back. So if you want to use a gadget with your children, you need to be there also. Don't just leave your children with the gadget. Regarding the bilingual language, it depends on your child cognitive. If usually normal development children, they have no issue with bilingual language. In our country, we have three main races: Malay, Chinese, and Indian. And also we use English as a second language. In our country, Malay is the first language. So some of the kids usually have in our country have a bilingual language. Usually if the children does not have any issue with cognitive, so I don't mind them to learn both, even though some of our kids have 3 language or 4 language during their childhood. How about your country?
It's the same. Someone is talking in, especially the child in urban area. They tend to talk in English. Someone is in Hindi, and someone in mixed language. But adults are preferring Bangla as it's the only one state language in this country. So, Mr. Utpal Mullik, as I think you have already know if you have already heard Mr. Safon's speech, and you know how a child with autism spectrum disorder suffering at home, at school, at outside of home, or in social activities. So do you think this situation needs to overcome, and do you think we need to work collaboratively with other professionals like doctors, psychologists, or someone who is in this society? What's your opinion?
Uh, of course, you see, uh, there are social taboos, curses, there are discrimination, and all these kind of bad experiences that a family, if not the uh, children having issues with their cognition, probably they in most cases don't personally understand what others are uh, uh, doing and thinking regarding them, but their families do understand, do experience negative attitudes, societal discriminations, and all these kind of increase their mental health burden. So, uh, as health professionals, we have collective responsibility, and you rightly mentioned professionals that we closely work with, and as I indicated few minutes earlier, this is this is something needs comprehensive effort from all ends, and we need to really break down the taboos and misperceptions that still exist within our communities, and that is because of lack of education, lack of awareness and understanding. And we are talking about disability mainstreaming these days, but that is not kind of uh, taking in place in a very systematic manner. So from development side, NGOs are doing their own on a projectile basis, and government machineries are just trying to cope with these buzzwords, not really doing meaningful changes within their capacities. So, of course, as health professionals, rehab professionals, we should continue raising our voices, a voice for the voiceless. So, yes, this is how we should be able to convince people at large, so that you know this kind of prejudice and fatal discriminations reduced to a level, so that more families uh, dare to bring their children uh, out of their home, try for schooling, and for the older children or adults with disabilities, so that uh, uh, they become little more positive uh, on their potential, not about just educational qualifications, and many of them already were kind of reported having multiple skills, outstanding skills. So every individual has own unique potential. So even the project I am currently running is kind of demonstrating ways how persons with disabilities can get employed, and how the private sector and other non-government employers get the confidence so that they can hire persons with disabilities. So that is possible. Though this is the new initiatives currently coming in the country, uh, and this kind of will take maybe another few years to mainstream the idea, so that more kind of job opportunities are created for them, and instead of being a social burden, economic burden, persons with disabilities will kind of appear as contributor, not just kind of recipient of services. Uh, so did it help, Siddiq? Or
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, sir. We are, dear viewers, we are going to finish this program within 10 minutes. But before finishing, I would like to ask Mr. Safwan for some recommendation home strategies for parents about treatment. So, do you have any recommendation for parents as they are at home, the children are at home, and schooling is already stopped, therapy is already stopped. So what is your recommendation?
Okay, so I wrap up with 5 tips on how to communicate for parents with autism kid. This one is from Hanan Modern Words. Okay, so the first one is being face to. The 5 thing is the first one is being face to face. So remember, autism kid usually have an eye contact. They usually have an eye contact issue. So in order for children to learn is they need to look at us. So be face to face. So it's easier for your child to look at you. That's the number 1. And then number 2 is observe, wait, and listen. It's quite popular. This one is, even though it's the OWL is also included in and then it takes to talk, but actually it start with wait. So whenever you see what your child are doing, you need to wait first. Stop what you are doing. And second, you observe. Observe what is he doing. Is he sending you a message? And the third one, listen to your child. Does your child produce sounds, word? Is he happy, or is he want to tell you something? Okay. So number 3 is include your child interest. So like I mentioned earlier, it's easier to engage with your child activity when you include your child interest. For example, some autism kids really love car. They're able to remember all type of the car in the world. I don't know how it's worked, but yeah, it's happened. So use that opportunity to teach your child's language, add more social communication goal. For example, what is car? How did he drive car? Where to drive car? So in there, you can teach them how to answer a question. And also, you can teach a concept. For example, how big is your car? Which car is bigger? Which one is smaller? And also, you can do some description tasks. For example, car have 4 tires and it's a blue car. It's a daddy car. It's a mommy's car. So include your child interest. That's number 3. And for number 4, use social routine. So social routine is actually what you do every day with your children. It's easier to teach language during social routine as you will repeat many times in a day. For example, how many times you change your child's clothes or brush teeth. So use this opportunity to add language to your child. During this activity, try to encourage their use parallel talk, self-talk, like Siddiq mentioned earlier. So in the beauty of if you include social routine during your therapy is you will repeat many times. Have you ever wondered why some of the kids might remember the nursery rhyme from YouTube? This is because the power of repetition. How many times they actually watch the nursery rhyme right in YouTube and they really engage in it and end up they will remember all the songs. So yes, use social routine. And the last one, join in the play. So if your child still like car, so join in play, try to imitate them. Don't try to change the way they play. But if they didn't play appropriately, of course you need to modify a little bit. For example, if they throw the car, so it's not appropriate, so teach them how to play with the car. Try to imitate them first. Eventually your child will look at you and they start to somehow wants to communicate with you, and that's the best time to teach language. Yeah, that's a 5 tips that parents can use for autism at home. Yeah.
So thank you so much for your important discussion regarding home strategies. Very important discussion it was. So this is the last question for this program for Mr. Utpal Mullik. What would be your message on inclusion for the larger disability movement in this country? This is the last question. I hope we will finish this program within 5 minutes.
Okay, definitely. I'll make the long story short. Uh, uh, this is a very good question. This touches me more than many other questions you asked, because you see, these rights, employment things are mostly the concern of families. I mean, with the initiatives of families, newer specialized schools are opening up, and in many other parts, families, self-advocates, they are forming their own organizations that are called known as disabled people's organizations, DPOs. So you see, uh, families as professionals, we have collective responsibilities, but we also know that DPOs can play a more powerful role, because they are pressure factor. They are working for their own rights, and they are uh, kind of fighting for their rights for many years. Many organizations are kind of trying this disability mainstreaming projects and ideas, but in a kind of very isolated, one-shot manners. So I think again we are losing opportunities as a nation. So I urge these disabled people's organizations to form umbrella organizations so that they can raise their voice more strongly and can negotiate, can bargain with government apparatus, and so that budgets are increased, rehab professionals are deployed within government capacities, and both health and other support services are provisioned for persons with disabilities, and I am expecting that day when that will happen, and that will happen for sure. And thank you. This is the first time I am joining with any such discussion webinar, and that was really a truly learning opportunity for me. Thank you, Safa and Esop. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I really learned a lot. And of course, the moderator, you opened this door for me, and I'll remember your name when I'll miss you. I'll do more things for the country. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Siddiq, also for inviting us. It's really a good opportunity to share with other people. Yeah. Thank you, Siddiq.
So, dear viewers, I hope and we hope also from this discussion you will learn something, or you already learned something special from hand strategy, from treatment techniques, and the importance of inclusion of disability to the mainstream society. So I apologize for my bad English, as Bengali is my first language and we usually don't talk in English, but for Safwan only, we had to talk in English. So stay safe, stay blessed, and hope to see you guys next week, dear viewers. I hope we will come with new episode and new guests next week at 10 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye bye.